there's there's going to be four main categories that they can fall into, not so much focusing on their personalities, like if they're funny or, the romance couple. It'd be more as a person, kind of what's their role in the book or in the story. Um, when reading stories or even, writing them when you're in the writer's seat, it's important that you have a wide variety of characters. And by this, I mean characters who are super important. You got the main characters, and then you have characters that maybe it's just somebody walking by who accidentally bumps into someone else. And other than that, you have no idea who the other character is. So there's a wide range of them. Um, and you need important characters and non-important characters to make a story great, right? You need extras. It's kind of like in a movie. If you were watching a movie that only had the main character shown, it'd be a little weird, right? So there wouldn't be any side characters, there wouldn't be any extras, any people in the background. So they'd basically, unless you're filming an apocalypse movie and it's solely based on one person, or like it would be very empty. You'd just be watching one person. That's not very interesting. So all characters are important. Sometimes you have to ask yourself, okay, why is this character in this story? They don't do anything. They're just annoying. They're just frustrating. They do serve a purpose, and the purpose could be just to bug the reader. There's a couple stories that have characters whose only purpose is to make people angry. Um, I know, not very familiar with Harry Potter, but there was a character, Professor Umbridge, who was put into the story so that she could drive people crazy because she was so mean and evil and like malice. She was just a mean character, and she was a teacher, so she was really mean to the students, and it caused a lot of conflict. Nobody liked her. I don't know a single person who liked her, but she had to be in the story to make people like get emotion out of them. And that's what kind of makes the story great. You got to feel something when you read it, or else you're just reading and it's kind of like, ugh. So there's four types of characters that we're just going to be focusing on. We have, you've probably heard of the protagonist and antagonist, right? Actually, these terms might be a little familiar. Round, flat, protagonist, antagonist. Are any of these unfamiliar that maybe you haven't heard of, or maybe you've heard of but you don't even know what they are? Okay. So the protagonist we know is, the main character. They're typically the good guys, or known as the good guys. It's gonna be your main character. So in Twilight, it was Bella. She was the protagonist. Um, in Star Wars, it's like depending on which trilogy you're watching, Luke Skywalker's the protagonist. In Harry Potter, Harry Potter's the protagonist. Right? It's the main character, the person that the story follows. Um, they're typically referred to as the hero or the heroine, but not always. What's fun about protagonists is that, or sometimes writers have fun where the protagonist is not actually the hero or the good guy. Have you guys ever watched a movie or seen a show or read a book where the main character isn't really the good guy? Like maybe they were in jail, or oh, have you guys Orange is the New Black, I guess would be a good example. The protagonist was Piper Chapman, who, you know, the show was about her and what happened to her, but she's not really a hero in the show. She's just kind of like she did something bad and now we're just following her and following around. Um, that's kind of fun when authors do that. It's like the movie Frozen. The prince was in love with Anna, but yeah, Frozen is a good example. He wasn't the main character. I think the prince would actually fall more under the antagonist or one of the antagonists in that story. So the antagonist is one of the, it's not the main character, but it's an important character, typically known as the bad guy. But again, the antagonist doesn't always have to be bad. Um, it just depends on who the story is being told by. And the main purpose of the antagonist is to cause conflict for the main character. So they're just there to cause problems. Um, if you've seen, like superhero movies, what is it? Thor. is the protagonist. He's, like the hero guy. And his brother becomes the antagonist because he's causing conflicts and trouble for Thor, right? He gets him sent down to Earth, and like if referring to the first movie, sent down to Earth, he gets stripped of his power, and then Loki wants to go and destroy him. So he's pretty much the bad guy in that movie, and he's causing a lot of problems for everybody. And he's what the antagonist is important to any story because if you read a story and there's no kind of conflict, then you're just basically reading like a flat line. Nothing's going on, so why would you keep reading, right? Have you guys read a story that had a really good antagonist, like a really good bad guy who was maybe really smart or clever? Hunger Games? Yeah. Are you referring to President Snow? Yeah, President Snow is a pretty good bad guy. He's very smart. He's very intimidating. He does a great job at being a bad guy. What about you, Kaylee? Any specific antagonists that kind of stood out? I think so. Okay, that's cool. But President Snow is a good example. And he's the main one for the Hunger Games, right? Because Katniss is battling against him. So yeah. So are the protagonist and antagonist. Don't get confused. Like 90% of the time, the protagonist is a good guy, but they can be the bad guy. And same goes with antagonist. 90% of the time, the antagonist is the bad guy, um, but they could also be a good guy. So if there was a movie about only the Joker, then the superheroes would be the antagonists because they're causing problems for the Joker if he was the main character. Um, the other two that we're going to look at is round and flat characters. These are kind of self-explanatory when you read the names. Round is, these characters are 3D, they're three-dimensional, which means they're not simple, they're complex, they're complicated. They have a lot of thoughts and emotions that you see, feelings, they have maybe ambitions and goals. Um, and with the round characters, you see growth in the story. So when you read the book, they may be like really mean and horrible, and then when you finish it, they've changed somehow, usually for the better. So they've realized something about themselves and they've grown. And the round characters, of course, a protagonist has to be a round character. They have to show some kind of growth. And sometimes the antagonists are round characters as well. They show growth. They're not just there to just be mean. Sometimes, we get a bit of the backstory. So that's fun. And then flat characters are kind of like your extras in a movie. Um, they're flat because they're refer to them as flat because they're 2D, they're two-dimensional, kind of like if you were just to draw on a paper, it's just flat. There's no shape to it. So they're not really complex. They're not complicated. Um, when we see them, we don't really see any like big emotions or if they have any goals in life or anything. They're just kind of there. Um, and they don't have any growth. So when you start the book or the story of the movie, um, that character is one way, and when the book ends, they haven't changed. They're the same as when the story began. So it's kind of like, why would you have a character in there that's flat and doesn't change or grow? It doesn't represent anything. Well, it's like I was saying before, when you go watch a movie, you have to have extras around who do or who are just there to make the story more full. Not everyone can grow because then that would just be way too long of a book if everyone had to grow and to be kind of confusing because there wouldn't be anyone to focus on. So flat characters are needed to kind of just fill in the gap, and sometimes they're even used to showcase certain qualities for the protagonist or the antagonist for other round characters. So if you have a flat character who's maybe not that smart, and you put them next to the protagonist who's a genius, it makes them look even smarter, right? Because they're standing next to someone who isn't quite at the same level. So that they're just used to kind of, buffer everything. How do we feel about those four? Are any of them confusing that you want to review? Those are going to be the only four that we focus in today. All right, cool. So let's look at these characters and see they're either going to be a protagonist, antagonist, round, or flat. So what kind of character is this? This is Katniss Everdeen from Hunger Games, so we kind of touched on this. What kind of character would she be? Brandon says pro. What about Kaylee? Right. She's the main character. She is the hero of the Hunger Games, so she's definitely the protagonist. Um, would you say she's a round character or a flat character? Is she complicated? Does she show growth? Round, right. Because she does change from the very beginning to the end. She's a completely different person, and a lot of that is the Hunger Games and just the everything that happened. But yeah, so she's a brown protagonist. All right, what about? Oh, okay. This is Voldemort from Harry Potter. Is he familiar to anybody? If you don't know, if you're not a Harry Potter fan, this may be a little bit harder. Okay, well let's look at him. So you guys don't know who he is. I'll tell you his name is Voldemort. Looking at him, does he look like a good character or a bad character? He has some long, creepy fingernails. His clothes looks kind of dirty. He's missing a nose. Bad. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and make some inferences. So looking at him, he looks like a bad character. So what most likely is he gonna be? What kind of character would he be most likely? He's the bad character in Harry Potter. All right. Brandon says antagonist. Antagonist. Yes, that's right. So this is the main bad guy for the Harry Potter series. Um, and you can kind of see. I mean, his nails are really long and they look really dirty, creepy face. Yeah. So he kind of gives it away. Yeah. Antagonist. Okay. Oh, it's a little blurry. So this is I hope you guys have seen Mean Girls. Okay. Good. Awesome. Sometimes students haven't seen it and I'm like, "Whoa, this is like a classic movie." Okay. So this is Karen Smith. Here's one of her, with the famous quotes from her. You want to get Taco Bell? What kind of character would she be? All right, Kaylee says flat. We know she's not the main character, right? All right, she's flat. Why is she a flat character? What makes her flat? Right? She doesn't change. That's right. She starts in the beginning. She's kind of, a little airheaded, kind of silly, and in the end, she's still kind of airheaded and silly. She doesn't really get affected by all the change that happens around in the Mean Girls clique. So yeah, this is probably my favorite example of a flat character. When I think of one, I'm like, oh, Karen, love her. She's a good character, very interesting. Um, just the stuff that she does, it's funny. But did she change? No, but she's still important to the story. Yeah, perfect example of flat character. All right, what about this character? Protagonist, antagonist, round, flat. All right, so she's protagonist and she's round. She changes from the beginning of Frozen to the end. And I just barely saw Frozen like maybe 2 weeks ago for the first time. And I was like, oh, that's why people like it so much. It took me a while, but yeah, I was a little late on that boat, so I didn't know what. I honestly couldn't even tell you which. Is this Elsa? No, I don't know which one this is. Anyway, but yeah, so she's pro, she's round, she grows up from the beginning of the movie. Not just that she was a little girl, um, but when she first, uh, she's growing up and they're about to have the ball, she's like, oh, I just want to fall in love and do so many things, and she's just really excited to finally be out of the castle, and so she's a little naive. And then by the end of it, she goes through this big adventure, and she's more mature and she's grown and she can see things clearly, like the evil prince. Yeah. So Definitely protagonist. She helps save her sister, and she shows growth. Alright. What about this lovely guy? My favorite Joker, next to Jack Nicholson. All right, antagonist. Do you think he's round or flat? This can kind of be a tricky one. This one would be, I think, maybe even up for debate. All right, so Brandon says flat. What do you think, Kaylee? Round or flat? Round. All right. Give me, I love that we have different answers here because I think that this guy could go either way. So, what are your reasons? Why do you think he's flat and why do you think he's round? We know he's an antagonist because he just causes all kinds of trouble for Batman. I mean, he's just blowing up hospitals and making the whole town go crazy. But what makes him round or what makes him flat? I think this would be an example of a really cool antagonist just because he's really twisted and kind of brilliant at what he does. His yellow teeth bug me though. Okay, so flat because he will always be the same, evil and mean. All right, that's very true. He doesn't, I mean, he starts off bad and he ends bad, right? So that's very true. Round because you think he changes because he changes his way of thinking. What do you mean by changes his way of thinking? How so? Because I know, let's see, in the movie The Dark Knight, he does kind of change his plan a bit. His plans, like as the movie's progressing, how he thinks of his evil plans. Yeah. So at first he's like, all right, I want to know who Batman is. Tell me right now, or I'm going to do something horrible. And then he's like, you know what? Wait, no, 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 no. Don't tell me who Batman is. If you do tell me who Batman is, we're going to like kill that one specific person. So he does, I mean, it's very complex. So he doesn't, that's why he's kind of both, he could go round or flat. He doesn't really change as far as like going from a bad guy to a good guy or having this like newfound sight about anything. He's still kind of crazy from the beginning to the end, but he's not a simple character. And we see that by how he like changes his plans throughout the movie and kind of like how he's thinking because when he's talking to Harvey Dent, who becomes Two-Face, we kind of get, a little bit of information about him. We realize that he is a complex character because the way he sees the world is kind of unique and interesting, right? He just likes chaos. That is what always changes. He likes chaos in the beginning, he likes chaos in the end. But we get his reasoning of why he likes that, and that I think does make him a complicated character. So it could be made, an argument could be made for both sides, round or flat. And what's even better, when you have characters like this, who you're not really sure if they would be flat or round, that's what makes them great characters. Because you have to think about it. It's not so easy. It's not just cut and dry, right? It's hard. It's complicated. It makes you think. And that's what a good character does. Okay, I can't look at his teeth anymore. Let's go ahead. All right, what about this dude? I forgot his name, but it's the little happy snowman from Frozen. Olaf. Thank you. I always want to call him Zoloff, but it's Olaf. Okay, so what kind of character is Olaf? I mean, looking at the picture, we know that he's a happy guy. All right, we have that character. Uh-huh. So, yeah, he's a flat character. He doesn't really change. He's a fun, happy snowman in the beginning, fun, happy snowman in the end. Um, he's kind of like a protagonist. He does help. He's more of a minor character, though, so he's not going to be the main character. Because we know the main character is the two sisters, Elsa and okay, what's the other girl's name? Elsa and who? Anna. Okay, there we go. Anna, got it. So he's kind of a minor character then, but he is flat and he is kind of important because he does help save Elsa, right? And he does add comic relief. So when you think of funny characters, this guy is hilarious. Yeah, yes, that one is easy. So we just reviewed a couple of them that I know. So what examples can you think of a protagonist that we didn't cover, or an antagonist? Or do you know any other interesting flat characters from a show or movie or book, what have you? Batman is a protagonist, definitely. Spider-Man is protagonist. Yep, definitely. Most of the superheroes are going to be protagonists. What about someone who's not a protagonist, but someone who's maybe an antagonist or flat character? Who's a bad guy? So we know in Batman he has a couple bad guys, right? We looked at the Joker. Are there any other what other bad guys can you remember from Batman? He has like he has like a million bad guys. I think actually most superheroes have a lot of them, but I feel like Batman's bad guys are kind of more well known. Poison Ivy is definitely an antagonist. Yep. Oh, I have a question. Antagonist poison. Okay. So I don't know how much you guys watch older movies. Um, it's okay. What about? Let me see if I can find her. Okay, here we go. Does this look familiar? This person. She was from the Batman movie by. Oh no, I just forgot. Tim Burton. There we go. All right, Catwoman. Yeah. So, did you guys see the movie that she was in, this specific remake of Batman? Oh, perfect. That is so nice. Okay, cool. So in this movie, would you say she's a flat character or round character? This interpretation of Catwoman, because there's a few. Round, right? Like she does change in the movie from being, this quiet little secretary lady to being this, super awesome, I'm gonna kick your butt woman, and I'm gonna dress like a cat with claws. So would you say that she is an antagonist in this movie or a protagonist? We know that the movie centers on Batman, right? So what does she fall under in this specific movie? She's probably my favorite Catwoman out of all the ones that have been made. You think she's both? Okay. So in this one, she kind of flip-flops a little bit. So in the beginning, well, like when she first turns into Catwoman, she's kind of more like a villain, right? Like she's just causing havoc. Like she's adding conflict to the story. So she's kind of an antagonist. But then in the end, she does kind of help Batman, and they have that whole little like weird love thing going on before they find out who each other is. Um, then she kind of becomes more of a protagonist. She's kind of become more of a hero in helping Batman defeat the evil Penguin. So this one's interesting how she flip flops. So that's another example of a good character who changes, and it makes you question, what she is. Now, if we were to look at this one, this version of Catwoman, played by Halle Berry, Is she as complicated? Would you say she's a protagonist or antagonist? Right. So this one's kind of straightforward. She's a pro. She's a protagonist because I mean the movie's named after her. She's the main character. Yeah, it's her own movie. So this is something kind of like that you can look at where even though it's the same character, depending on which perspective it's being shown from, will change whether they're an antagonist or protagonist. So typically Catwoman is known as one of the bad guys in, Batman world. So she's an antagonist, but give her her own movie and she's now the protagonist. Does that mean that she only does good? No, she does do bad things, but it's her. She's the center of it. She's the main character. So she's a protagonist in this one. Go back to the Tim Burton one. She's mostly an antagonist and then changes her mind and becomes a good guy. But antagonist for the most part. So that's an example of how they can change and how protagonist doesn't always mean good, perfect hero person, right? They have flaws. Okay. All right. So, what do I have for you guys? I think. Yes. Okay. So that's all that we're going to go over for today. I'm going to give you guys an assessment. So if you would just give me one moment, let me go grab it. This one's yours. So you should be able to click on this link and it will take you to your assessment. Now these are going to be what you just fill out after every session to make sure you get full points. And it's just like 5 questions, not including your name. Um, so you're just going to go ahead and once you're done with it, you're going to hit submit. And then you should have a green box that says, thank you for submitting. And then you know that it went through.